All right. We now have our final application. We have our homepage, our footer, our header, our contact page with our form that has a little bit of validation on it. We have our user section that pulls from the GitHub API, and we can click one of these and it pulls their user info and their profile from the GitHub API. We've used the router. We can deal with route parameters. We've used the HTTP library to go get data from an external API. We've created a service. We've created many components. We've created a form with the forms library. So all in all, I think we've done a lot of great stuff with Angular, and I hope that was a good overview on how we can use Angular and the Angular CLI to build out applications pretty quickly. Next, I want to talk a little bit about organization. If we go and look at our application here, we'll open up the sidebar. We have our app folder, and this is very close to how I want it. If you were coming from one of the older AngularJS projects, you might have seen something like a new folder for components and a folder for services. While that works for smaller applications, I think that going to larger applications, and this is kind of what the Angular style guide suggests as well, is that we should organize things by feature. And what do I mean by that? We're pretty close to it, right? We have contact, which is the contact page, footer, header, home. All of these are certain feature sections of our application, especially users, where it has its own module, and user list, user single. So each of these folders is a feature. But the header and the footer are kind of core features, right? They are used across our entire application. So is the user service. So in that regard, Angular suggests making what's called a core module, and all the things that are useful across your entire application go into the core module, and that's your core feature set. This way we can keep all of these things in the app folder kind of compartmentalized, and those are going to be separate sections for our application. So this is how we are going to start organizing our app. ngg module core, and that creates a core module. But now we're going to have to move some things around. And let's close out our ngserve while we are moving things around. We're going to have the header inside of the core. We're going to have the footer inside of the core. And we'll also have the user service inside of the core. You could actually even do this further where you create a folder for components and then a folder for services. And we'll move this in here, and we'll move footer and the header in there. And you may be wondering why I haven't turned this off. It's because I sometimes randomly move folders around, so I like having this extra prompt here, just in case I accidentally move some things around. But this is how things are going to be structured here. We have features, and then inside of each feature, we'll have components and services. Usually services are going to be stuck in the core module. That's kind of the recommended place to put them, is the core module, so that we can load the core module. And let's do that now. We'll go core module, we'll load it in app module. Now we don't need header and footer. We don't need the user service, since that'll all be loaded in the core module. We'll remove header and footer from declarations. We'll remove user service from the providers. And now we just say core module, and that gets added here. And this is just a quick way to organize our application. So now we look at our app module, we say, okay, we got the browser, app routing module, forms, HTTP, and the main core module. Since we refactored a lot of things, anything that uses services has to be moved around. So users, user single component. Let's delete this line right here for the user service. And then let's just retype it so VS Code can get us a new link. There you go, ... core services, user service. Let's do the same for user list. Okay. So those two are done. And then let's see, what else do we need? The header and the footer components are now under core, and I think the app component uses those. Oh no, the core module needs to have those added. Declarations, we're going to have header component, footer component, And then providers is going to be user service. And also, since our header uses a couple HTTP, since our header uses router links, we need the router module. And one final thing to note is all of these components are part of our core module, but our main app component is going to use header and footer. So that means we have to add something that's called the exports array. So exports means that we're going to use these two outside of this core module. All right, so that should be everything about refactoring into a core feature module. Now, this is where our services go. This is where our components go for anything that's used across the board. And then for things that are shared, there's also a shared module, which we're not going to work with right now. We don't have enough of a large application to be creating a shared module. If you even wanted to, you could create another module for pages. So you would have home and contact, and then users would be its own module so that you can start to compartmentalize your application even further. But that's all in all a good way to think about your Angular apps, right? We have a bunch of modules that are going to pull together to create our overall application. Let's make sure everything works again. ng-serve. All right, let's go back over here. Home, contact, users, and a user. All right, so everything is working just as it was. We just reorganized some things to be a little bit cleaner. And I would highly recommend going to take a look at the Angular style guide on components and core feature modules, shared modules, and all the good things that Angular style guide has to offer.